All right, hello 1101 class. Today we're going to be talking about rhetorical strategies. So part of the goal of composition is to teach you how to use these rhetorical strategies. Rhetoric is basically the art of getting people to understand your position. So the use of rhetoric is basically important in terms of effective communication. If you want to be good at communicating, at reaching other people, you need to master rhetorical strategies. Your textbook, the OER, which is on Blackboard, has a chapter, Chapter 3, Rhetorical Modes of Writing, which goes over 9 rhetorical strategies, all of which we will cover, but only maybe about half of them we end up using or you have the option to use. So the first rhetorical strategy I want to talk about is narration. What is narration? This is basically the art of storytelling. Okay, so if you're going to narrate a story about the time you went to Walmart and saw that weird guy, right? Then you sit down and you come up with a process of, okay, this is the first thing that happened, this is the next thing that happened. You come up with a logical way to tell your story. Some stories are not always told logically. There are different ways to do narration. In literature, there's such a thing as an unreliable narrator, right? A narrator that doesn't actually tell you what's really going on, so you have to figure it out for yourself, that kind of thing. There are different strategies for narration. There can be an omniscient or omnipotent narrator, a narrator that's not actually in the story but knows everything. There could be a first-person narrator. Maybe it's from your perspective, like you were the one that went to the store. And so there are different ways to do it, but it's one of the strategies. It's also one of the strategies that's available for Essay 1. If you want to compose an essay telling a story, you can do so. I would just say that be careful to make sure that that's structured and organized very well, because a story that goes all over the place, we all have that one friend that tells a story that's very long-winded and they take forever and they give you a bunch of unimportant details like what kind of gum the person was chewing and all this different stuff. So you really want to be careful with narration. I would recommend picking one of the other strategies, to be honest with you, but it is on there and you can choose it if you're feeling bold. The next one, description. So description has to do with your 5 senses, right? When you describe something, you want to give me all of the sensory details that I need to create a picture of that thing in my mind, right? So the focus is on sensory input. How did it look? How did it feel? How did it taste? How did it smell? What did you hear when you were there, right? Those are the things you want to focus on when you're doing the description strategy. The description strategy is not one of the strategies for Essay 1, but you still need to be aware of it and its existence, right? It's very useful to be able to describe things accurately to other people. So you want to focus on the specific sensory details and be very careful about, and like I said, specific about the information that you relay, right? It's very important. Okay. The next one is classification and division, classification or division and division, whatever you want to say. So one of the ways to understand things is to figure out how it relates to other things in terms of categories. So when you think about the United States, if we were to talk about the United States, I ask, what is the United States? Well, you're going to be talking for a while because there are lots of things that the United States encompasses, right? So you have to figure out a way to break down the United States in a way that I can understand what it is. So there are lots of ways to do this. You could do this by region. You could do it by state. I like the region idea because you think, okay, so the United States is a collection of different regions that all have their own sort of unique, specific identity. There's some variances in culture, some variances in, the kinds of people that live there and that sort of thing. So that is a way for you to take the big category of the United States and break it down into smaller digestible pieces. That's classification and division. There are lots of things you could do this on. Think about different types of food. How do you break down different types of food? Well, you could do it by the country of origin of the food. You could do it by the way the food tastes, bitter food, sweet food, that sort of thing. So there are lots of ways to break things down into categories. Classification and division is one of the major strategies that you can choose for the first essay. So we'll move to the next one, which is process. What is process? Well, process is the process of telling people how to do something. So if you were going to write an essay that was like, let's say, a process essay on how to change a light bulb, right? You would really want to make sure that you included all of the necessary steps to changing the light bulb, such that if someone wanted to read your essay and then change a light bulb, they would be able to do it. There are lots of things that you can describe process for. changing oil, process of, you could even do writing an essay if you want to get weird and meta on us, right? Get, into that territory. The process of mowing the lawn, the process of filing for a specific permit, right? There are tons of different processes that you could explain. Again, really, a lot of what Essay 1 comes down to is organization and structure. How do you structure your process? What are the steps? How have you chosen those steps? Are you just rattling off one thing after the other and bombarding your reader with all this information? Or have you broken it down in a way, step 1, step 2, step 3, that makes a lot of sense, right? You want to think about that. Next strategy, cause and effect, okay? So cause and effect is kind of it's most useful as a prediction, right? You say, if we do this, then this will happen, right? And you see this a lot in politics. People say, well, if we make this a law, then we'll have these problems. If we do this, then that'll happen. If we build nuclear reactors, there's a chance that they could go haywire and cause problems. So cause and effect is basically a way for you to lay out the likelihood that a specific event, let's say canceling school nationwide, will have these effects. And we're seeing that right now, right? What are the effects of making school online and canceling in-person meetings and those sorts of things? So cause and effect is another strategy. Let me double check real quick. It is one of these strategies on Essay 1, so you may use cause and effect. And if you need more information about any of these strategies, there is a folder called Rhetorical Modes of Writing that has lesson units on each one. I'm not asking you to do any of the assignments in there. You can, if you think it will help you. But really, reading the chapter in the book and reading about each strategy, it might help you get a better idea of not just what they are, which is what this video is about, but how to implement them into Essay 4. The next one is definition. Now you may say, how is definition different than description? Well, description really only focused on the sensory details, right? How the thing looks, how it smells, how it feels, right? But the definition might actually be outside of the realm of the senses. So if we were, like, for example, if we were going to define what a tractor is, you could tell me that it was, they're usually green, kind of large, you could describe it all day, but it wouldn't necessarily tell me what a tractor does, right? That's another part of the definition that doesn't really have much to do with the actual just raw sensory input. Like, you can watch a tractor and figure out what it does, but the definition of tractor, well, what is a tractor? It's a tool to help with farming and all this other stuff. So the definition has to do with not only how the thing looks, smells, tastes, and feels, but what it does and what its function is, its purpose, right? So that's another way to think about how would you define, for example, Little League Baseball, right? What are the different ways that you could define that as a construct? What is the function of Little League Baseball? It builds character, it increases athleticism, all this other stuff that you could throw into the description that doesn't just have to do with the sensory details of a baseball game. I hope that makes sense. Exemplification. Exemplification is the use of examples to fortify a point. So if I were to say, plagiarism will get you a 0. For example, student X that committed Y act of plagiarism had these things happen to them that resulted in negative academic consequences, including failure of the class. So I used a specific example. I didn't, obviously I didn't actually give you a specific example, but I use an example to fortify a point. Let me think of another example. Let's see. Let's see. If I were to say sports improve athleticism. For example, here is one student that performs sports. Here is another one that doesn't. I show you via those examples that clearly the student who plays sports has higher athleticism. Therefore, I prove my point with an example. When we use the exemplification strategy, most of what we're using comes from like secondary sources. So we use examples from texts that we find to fortify, like facts and things that are established by credible sources. We'll take those and use them as examples, which is where that word exemplification comes from. Okay, so that's another strategy. And then the final strategy that I want to talk about is the persuasion strategy. And we have an entire unit on persuasion and argumentation. That's the second unit. We're going to basically use some exemplification too. We're going to be using secondary sources, but what we're trying to do for the second unit is make an argument. For the first unit, we're really just trying to master essay structure, MLA format, grammar mechanics, those kinds of things. The second essay, I want to see how you do when you try to prove a specific argument or a specific point, right? And that's the persuasion strategy. So persuasion is, how do I get the person that I am communicating with to agree with my position or to consider my position? It's easier said than done. A lot of people are really stuck in their certain ideologies and things, and they don't always listen to persuasive arguments. But it is possible for you to win someone over by presenting facts in a way that changes their opinion. So persuasion is very important. If I were to weigh one of these strategies over the other, I would definitely weigh persuasion over the others, because persuasion is the most important. If you are persuasive, you can get a lot done in the world. This is a fact. And so we do have a whole, like I said, a whole unit. The second unit focuses on the persuasive strategy and the argumentative strategy and figuring out how to prove an argument using secondary sources in a way that is logical and credible, okay? So those are the strategies, just kind of a general overview. Like I said, if you want to read up some more on the strategies individually, go into the Rhetorical Modes of Writing folder on Blackboard, and it has each one of them broken down. There are materials in each folder to help you. There are links to the chapter, and you can read it for yourself. And hopefully this kind of helps you get a perspective of what we're going to be dealing with. The next video I'm going to give out is about thesis and topic sentences. I'm also going to do another video about plagiarism, because that's a huge problem. I mentioned that in the syllabus video, but plagiarism is a big issue. So keep an eye out for future videos, and thanks for watching.